all of my colleagues. This has been phenomenal. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kendall Vidal. I'm a licensed real estate salesperson in the Bedside office under the leadership and guidance of Juliana DeRiggs Brown. I have been in the business for a bit, but since Corcoran, since January when City Habitats was acquired, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. So briefly, I am the youngest of seven. I was given the opportunity to attend private school, unlike my three older brothers and three older sisters. My sisters were able to navigate the public school system, but unfortunately, due to lack of support offered young Black men, they were not able to do so. I was one of a handful of Blacks who attended the private school, but that is a conversation for another day. In 1862, the Homestead Act was passed in the United States. This allowed for any American, including freed slaves, to put in a claim for up to 160 acres of free federal land. A lot of free Blacks were able to obtain land. However, around this time, a paramilitary white supremacist group was being thought of and finally became the Ku Klux Klan in 1865. They and other white supremacist groups began a reign of terror of the free Blacks by burning their homes, barns, and committing other acts of violence. In 1866, the first Civil Rights Act was passed, declaring all male persons born in the United States to be citizens without distinction of race, color, previous condition, slavery, or involuntary servitude. This act was enacted by Congress after President Johnson vetoed it. Of course, President Johnson was vocally anti-Black and passed numerous Black codes depriving free Blacks of civil liberties. One historian, Eric Foner, observed that the Klan was a military force. Even though the 1866 Civil Rights Act was passed, the Klan was a military arm and ideology in place undermining that effort. The man who drove the truck into some protesters recently, a few days ago, has confessed to being a leader of the local Klan in that area. In 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till of Chicago visited some relatives in Mississippi. He bought some candy from a grocery store and whistled at the white woman owner when she left. This woman later claimed that young Emmett had made lewd advances towards her. He was later found lynched. This launched the beginning of the modern Civil Rights movement. In 1963, Dr. King led a massive protest about the inequalities of Blacks. In 1964, the second Civil Rights Act was passed, declaring that all persons born in the United States were now citizens regardless of race, color, and previous condition. All this is mentioned because while all this was going on, Black Wall Street, a thriving Black neighborhood, was burned by a white mob in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. The town of Rosewood, Florida, another thriving Black town, was destroyed in 1923, also by a white mob. In 1934, the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, refused to insure mortgages in and near Black neighborhoods, which is known as redlining. So, what can be done to help? Invite Blacks to the table. There are a plethora of qualified Blacks who can work on large-scale projects. We can do the work. We just need an opportunity. In my humble opinion, there needs to be more Black male leaders in positions of influence. I think corporate does an amazing job of hiring. I think that top down from Reality, NRC, and the like, there's only a handful of Black leaders that you see present on the websites. And I think that there needs to be more specifically Black male leaders, in my humble opinion. Finally, white people of influence and privilege who feel the tug on their hearts for social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion must use their platforms to reach other influential whites who feel the same and begin to partner with Blacks. This will not be sexy. It will be messy. It must be done in order for our children and their children to benefit. Finally, this wasn't on my speech, but Black Lives Matter. When we say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't negate that your life doesn't matter. It also doesn't mean that all lives do not matter. That means that if a fire is occurring in a single family home right now, as a 5-alarm fire, and another person runs down the street whose house is not on fire and says, well, what about my house? The firefighter is not taking care of your house right now because this is the house that matters. This house is on fire right now. Your house, of course, matters, but this house matters right now. And with that, I will turn it over to Tim Cass, who is the Senior Managing Director of one of the Corcoran offices.